to begin with, we're going to talk about the prompt. Now this paper, I've already touched the wrong thing, is a proper research paper. What do I mean when I say that? I know a lot of folks, especially like last year high school, write some kind of a research paper. My knowledge of most of those assignments are not real research papers. So I don't want anyone going and thinking they know what this is necessarily. But we'll see. To begin with, source text. It's up to you. We have an approval process. We're going to go through that. But basically, hopefully for today, you watched Die Hard. I'm not going to ask. We'll find out. But it's a pretty fun movie, I think. I could have assigned you worse things. But basically, that's our class text. So we're going to watch Die Hard and use that to talk about in class because you guys are going to pick your own things. This can be movie, TV, books. I've had students write about albums before. I had a student a couple years ago write about a guy named Young Thug. Well, here's the thing, he's a rapper, right? So you would think, well, that's not like a character, but he has a public persona. Especially once she told me more about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's like a public persona, which is basically a character. So she took like one or two of his music videos and like stuff he's, I think like posted to Instagram, or read him as a text. Like there's all kinds of characters, essentially, you can kind of dig into and talk about with this assignment. But because of that, we need a class text that we've all seen and we all have like a shared knowledge of, so we can talk about it. But we're going to take the ways we approach Die Hard and apply that to whatever you end up wanting to do. And I think I saw a hand. Did I answer whatever question you?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh, sure. Okay, cool.
Sorry.
Even better. Don't worry about it. The length is 5 pages. I know that feels like a lot, but you guys just turned in 4 pages. It's really not that bad. Percentage, 30%. That is kind of a lot, so that's all good. Format is MLA. If you don't know what that is at this point, I mean, I don't know how to help you. Final draft, week 16 by November 25th. Today's the 19th. All we're going to do this week, we're going to practice both days, Monday and Wednesday, with like scenes from Die Hard. We're going to talk about it in all the kinds of ways. I want you guys to think about your stuff. And then your homework at the end of the week is a discussion board post where basically you brainstorm with your classmates about different kinds of texts you could do. So I really want you to do this week is figure out what you think you want to write about. And that means you're going to have a month and a little bit of change to write the paper, which I feel like is adequate time. What the assignment is, as always, there's a lot of language here. I'm going to sum it up to the best of my ability. Basically, I had you guys do the second paper, the informative synthesis, because I think it's really good practice for this paper in a couple of ways. But the difference between the informative synthesis and a research paper is this. Are you guys familiar with Destiny's Child? You've heard of them. Okay, they were big when I was your age. But that's kind of the point. The informative synthesis is Destiny's Child. That's different voices singing together, kind of come together, right? Like nobody really stands out above anybody else. I mean, somebody does, let's be fair, but you get my point. The research paper, you are Beyonce. You're going to have research. They're your backup singers, okay? Those are the other people in Destiny's Child. Once Beyonce was like, I don't really need them so much. That's what this is. You have an argument, much like you did in the first paper, okay? You are making an argument about your text. And then you're going to find articles or what have you that support your argument in some way, or maybe refute it in some way, and then you talk to me about why that article is wrong, thus making your point, you know what I'm saying? But any research you do here is to back you up. These should be your ideas first. You guys clear on what I mean when I say that? Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a note down here about sources, primary source. Ideally, I would like your primary source to be from 1990 onward. I know that won't be a struggle for you guys because you're not even that old. I should own the fact, though, that Die Hard came out in 1988. So to be completely honest with you, this breaks that rule, okay? But the note goes on to say, if you come to me with a text that you really want to write about for some reason, I'll talk to you about it. I make exceptions every semester for this rule. It just depends, okay? So for instance, every semester, without fail, I get somebody wanting to write about Scarface. One of the, I could say this without hesitation, most overrated films of all time. But one of the things I tell those people every time they come to me is, that came out in the 70s. You know that, right? And most of the time they're like, what? It's an old movie. And that's fine. The exception comes into play is that you come to me with like some good ideas. Here's what I think is going on, blah, blah, blah. And they always want to talk to me like, yeah, Scarface is about like rags to riches, bootstraps. It kind of is. Because he's an immigrant, he starts with nothing, builds his way up, you know, that's the story. There's a lot of other things going on in that movie, mostly drug-fueled. There's also a lot of murder. He dies next to a comical pile of cocaine. Like, the end of that movie is ridiculous. Like, it's actually ridiculous. No one really deals with that when they want to talk to me about the movie. So it's like, I'm just using that as an example. Because I have had really good papers that break that rule, but a lot of the time it's just people that basically didn't think about a source at all, and then when it comes time to pick one, they just go, here's something I've seen. And Scarface is one of those for some reason. Source requirements. Pretty much the same as the last paper. There's more of them. The reason for that, you have one source, that's your primary source, whatever your text is, okay? You're going to have 4 secondary sources. Those work the same way as they did in the informative synthesis. Articles, for the most part, you find on Galileo or some other database. There are other kinds of sources you can use, of course. Many of you did for the informative synthesis. It just kind of depends. But you want to hold them to the same standard, basically, we use for the second paper. What else? Oh, in terms of the bibs, really quickly, you're going to write me a proposal for the primary text, okay? That's basically the bib for that text this time. So when you do the annotated bibs, those are only secondary sources, right? Because I know on the second paper we did one for Vonnegut. We're not doing that this time. Does that make sense? All right, I'm almost done. Suggested thesis. So what I have here at the bottom, this is a working thesis with some issues, and that's on purpose. A statement such as, a lumberjack is the best representation of contemporary masculinity. That's actually a decent start. I would want to know what lumberjack, and also how is it a great representation of contemporary masculinity? Like what, like we always say, does this lumberjack have to say about us as a people, a society, a culture? If you can answer that question with any kind of detail, you're probably headed in a good direction, right? The example I would give you, the only lumberjack I can think of. Are you guys familiar with Bounty paper towels?
Yeah.
Okay. It's got that ridiculous guy on the front. He's always in flannel. The sleeves are rolled up. Got kind of big, hairy forearms. There's 2 basic sort of lines of thought on that marketing, because it's marketing. Number 1, well, what are paper towels? They are meant to clean up stuff around the house, right? That's explicitly what they're for. Traditionally speaking, that's not really seen as a masculine thing to do, right? That's more in line with feminine stereotypes. Well, how do you sell paper towels to men, primarily young men who might be living on their own, you know? You put a kind of buff, woodsy dude on the front. It's like, well, that guy cleans up. He's on the front of the paper towel, so I can buy those. That's one. The flip side of that line of thinking is, well, also, women buy paper towels, stereotypically speaking. Let's find a guy, like a character, that ties into those stereotypical assumptions that they might find attractive. Put him on the cover. Same kind of idea applies definitely, and you would know this better than both of us, sorry. Any guy, anything sold to younger men, like 18 to 24, that demographic, pretty much everything that's marketed at you is like half-naked women. Legit. Every beer commercial, Axe body spray, it's either guys doing flips on bicycles or women taking their clothes off. Like that's everything. It's the same line of thinking with the Bounty guy in that case. A little less overt, but the same idea. Either one of those lines of thought, would make a really interesting paper if you wanted to write about paper towels. But you don't have to do that, right? I'm just giving you an example, probably too detailed. Okay, all that out of the way. Questions at this stage about the paper or any of that?
So is Die Hard one of the sources we need to use?
No.
No.
I'm glad you asked, but no. Do not write about Die Hard
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Like, so just to be clear, this is our class text. So we use this because you're all going to have your own thing. And this is something we can all know and talk about as a class. Because especially by the end of the semester, when you're all really knee-deep in your texts, you're going to know a lot about whatever that is and no one else is.
Mm-hmm.
And that would make discussion basically impossible. So this is to help us just practice, essentially. Any other questions? Sweet. All right. What we're going to do now, this is, at the very least, more engaging than looking at a prompt. We're going to look at a couple scenes. All I want to do today, this is practice, as I said. My advice would be have something to take some kind of notes on. If that's electronic, that's fine. If you want to write it down, that's fine. It's up to you. We're going to watch a couple quick scenes, and the idea today is I want you to take notice of the fact that in every text, but in this case movies, in every text, you have all kinds of details you could dig into and you could think about. That's not to say you got to dig into every detail in your paper. That would not be feasible. But I want you to see the menu you have in front of you, okay? I would liken it to this. In Slaughterhouse 5, when I give you guys a page number, maybe we read a paragraph or two, that's a scene, right? We're looking at a scene. And then how do we go through it? Well, what did this character say? Or how did they say it? Or what did this guy do after this happened, right? We consider those details and we tease out different ideas, different arguments. Same kind of thing here. That's exactly what we're going to do right now, okay? In this first scene, in all the scenes, actually, I want you to do this. Do your best to jot down anything you think is significant. If you have an idea about it, by all means, I want to hear that. But even if you don't, if you're just like, well, I noticed this, and it seems like it could be important, jot that down, right? We're going to talk about that. The first thing we're going to look at is actually the first scene in the movie. This is when they land at the airport. We're going to go inside the plane. We're going to meet the main character, all that stuff. What else? Oh, for whatever reason, the plane is the loudest fucking thing in the movie. So I'm going to have it turned down, and when they start talking, I'm going to turn it up. So just so you know. All right.
Secret to surviving air travel? After you get where you're going, take off your shoes and your socks. Then you walk around on the rug barefoot and make fists with your toes.
Fists with your toes?
I know, it sounds crazy. Trust me, I've been doing it for 9 years. Yes, sir, better than a shower and a hot cup of coffee.
Okay. It's okay, I'm a cop. Trust me. I've been doing this for 11 years.
Captain and crew would like to welcome you to Los Angeles. Have a very Merry Christmas.
Okay. That was it, right? First, 60 seconds of the movie or whatever. I want to start with anything that you guys noticed. Anything stands out to you?
He tries to hide the fact that he's scared of his mama.
You feel like he tries to hide it?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Because you can see him grasping onto the armrest, but on his face he's like laid back, calm, relaxed. Like
That's interesting. I honestly hadn't considered that. Maybe so. Okay. Why do you think he would try to hide that?
Because he's trying to be, masculine. That men shouldn't be afraid of anything, even if it's flying. So,
Sure. Yeah. It's just flying around. Shouldn't be worried about it.
yeah.
Maybe so. Now, on that note, though, and here's an important distinction. He may be. I think you can make the case, perhaps, that he tries to hide it. I'm with you there. But the movie wants us to know he's afraid. Like the director wants us to know he's afraid. How do you know that?
Because the dude next one brings it up.
That, even before that.
And his expression, like how he's holding on.
Yeah, so here's one thing I want you guys, I'm kind of glad you brought this up right from the jump. Like, again, this goes for any visual medium. A director, when they're making this, you notice all these cuts. We're jumping around all over the place. That's the director like grabbing your head and just saying, all right, now look at this, now look over here, now look here. And they're just moving around your gaze, right, your vision. They want you to focus on his hand in that scene, right? And that's how we're introduced to him, right? No one has said anything. I believe I'm correct. We haven't even seen his face yet, right? We start on his hand. So our first impression of this guy is that he's afraid of flying. That's kind of interesting, especially the more we learn about him, especially after he does all the crazy shit he does, right? That's where we start, is his hand on that armrest, like really tense, just, ugh. That's interesting. It kind of undercuts some of what we would expect from this kind of a character, right? Okay.
And his teddy bear, too.
A teddy bear, all right.
So that's in the next 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's here. So, like, two things with that. Number one, we're going to backtrack a little bit. We learned two things about him from that first shot. We learned that he's scared to fly. What else do we learn about him?
I would say he doesn't follow the rules.
No. Calm down. No, slow down, rather. Just that one shot with his hand on the armrest. We learned one other thing. Did you guys catch it?
I want to say he was married.
Yeah. You see his wedding ring, right? Again, that's how we're introduced to this guy. He hasn't said a word. We haven't seen his face. We know he's afraid to fly, and he's married. Now, those may not be key pieces of information, but it's an interesting way to start. Like, we're basically, the movie, everything we're going to watch today is the first 10 minutes of the movie. We're not going to get any deeper than that. It's just a laundry list of characteristics of this guy. And it's an interesting choice that those are the first two, right? We have certain expectations of this guy given that information, you know? And to kind of build on that, we're going to get to the bear. The guy next to him, I don't know if you noticed, sees his hand. Like, that's what starts the conversation. You see the guy kind of look down and smirk, and then he gives him that weird advice. He says he's been doing it for 9 years, right? So he's like a pro at this whole flying thing. He's trying to help him out. What happens after that? They have a moment. Him and this guy. Kind of freaks the guy out, the businessman out.
Oh, when he gets up and grabs his stuff,
Yeah.
firearm. Yeah,
He
that's
sees
what-
his gun.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. He doesn't follow rules because he.
Oh, well, he's allowed to fly with it, I think.
Not unless you're everyone. Flight warden. or something?
Sure. I don't know about the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know about rules in the 80s. I think on the movie's logic, like, he's allowed to. But that's fair. I'm not quite sure about the laws in the 80s. But whether it's, like, legal, the guy sort of accepts it, right? Like, he's like, okay, he's a cop, right? What changes? Like, initially, why is he freaked out when he finds out the guy has a gun? That should be pretty easy.
They're on a plane.
Yeah.
Not cool, bro. You're not supposed to have one here, as you said. But when he says he's a cop, then at the very least, whether it's legal or not, I don't know, it excuses it, right? It's like, no, it's cool. I'm, like, supposed to have a gun. Why is that, do you think?
Why do we think it excuses him having a gun?
Sure. The fact that he's a cop. Like, so what?
Because that's the image we have of those police officers. They're supposed to be armed at all times.
That's part of the uniform,
Yeah.
right? Like, he's not in the rest of the uniform. You don't get the sense that maybe he's that kind of cop. he's like maybe an investigator or something. We've all seen SVU, but like, yeah, that's part of the uniform. You see him walking around campus sometimes, and like, that's how it works. It's part of it. Yeah. So the first three pieces of information then: married, afraid to fly, cop. Those have certain expectations. And on top of that, the movie is even aware of them, right? He says to the guy, no, it's cool, I'm a cop. He basically says, oh, you have the wrong idea of me. Let me fill you in. Let me help you understand me with a stereotype here that you can better navigate like what you need to know about me, right? The point I'm making here is to introduce the character like this, the movie kind of tells you we're going to be thinking about this process a lot. Stereotypes, how to navigate them, how certain characters maybe take advantage of them, how we use them to move through the world. All over this movie. But okay, all that out of the way, now we can talk about the bear. What's that about?
I think he might carry it everywhere he travels.
Yeah.
It's like a security thing.
I wouldn't quite say that. I feel like you might not watch the movie, but that's okay. When you see the bear, what do you assume?
It's a gift for someone else,
For who?
for his wife, he's married, or a significant other, married.
You think it's for his wife?
Yeah.
Are you serious? A
I
big
don't
bear?
think it's for his wife.
Is a 40-year-old man. He's getting his wife a bear?
He's a police officer that's always working, missing major holidays probably, so he has to make up with something.
With a big bear?
Yeah.
He's going to be a divorce cop, is what he's going to be. You don't get a woman a bear? Who do you get bears for?
Kids.
Children. Yeah. You guys. He's a family man. He's not just married, that's part of the equation, right? But the ring plus teddy bear equals family. He's a dad. And now, again, you don't even know his name yet, but you know you assume he's getting off this plane with that bear because he's going to see his family. And it is a gift that he's taking to them for some reason. We don't know the reason yet. Yeah. That has a certain set of expectations too, right? Of how we picture dads, especially the kind that would bring a gift, right? Like we feel like we understand certain things about this guy. He's barely said anything. One other I can think of, big moment in this scene. I'm kind of curious if you guys noticed it. One thing we haven't talked about yet.
The moment the flight attendant walks past,
What about it?
a whole bunch of sexual attention for two random strangers.
Yeah, well, and here's what's interesting about that. So you kind of see him to begin with, and I could be wrong, but I don't think his face shows much, and then it cuts to kind of over his shoulder, and you see her face. She definitely eyes him, like she checks him out, basically, right? Why do that? Like all of this is scripted, right? So like it's in the script. The director wants it shot this way, wants us to see her checking him out. Why, though? Do you think?
To show that he's wanted by other females.
Good.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Good. So he's like sexually attractive, sexually viable, right? We've talked about this before. This goes all the way back to old men playing basketball. Like part of that speaker's concerns is, are they physically able? But I think right along with it would be, pardon the euphemism, but it takes two to tango, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's got to check that box in terms of those stereotypes. And he does. Okay, so he's a family man, he's a cop, but the women want him. Let's not forget, that's important too, apparently. Okay.
Well, I feel like him having the teddy bear for his kid also makes him more sensitive to women, so they might find them attractive too.
Maybe so. Oh no, it's interesting. So, I can't get into this too much until the next scene because that'll better explain it. But a lot of what this character is, John McClane, is there's a weird balance in the movie between hero, because again, once the action starts, it's insane, right? Not superhero, but kind of on that level. And then this other thing that seems more like everyday guy, almost, type of thing. But yeah, I'm with you there. There's moments like that that undercut that other image. So he's a cop with a gun, but then he gets the teddy bear immediately afterward, right? Yeah, there's a bit of balance here. Okay. The next scene, and we're just watching these all in order. This is immediately after he gets off the plane. He's walking through the terminal. He's going to meet Argyle.
California. Yeah, I'm John McClane.
Argyle, I'm your limo driver. Nice beer.
Okay. Argyle, what do we do now?
Was hoping you could tell me. It's my first time driving a limo.
It's okay. It's my first time riding in one.
Relax. We got everything in this mug, man. Look at this. CD, CB, TV, telephone, full bar, VHS. If your brands have to trot, a few mama bears we can hook up with. Or is he married?
He's married.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that. It's the girl's day off. I didn't know you were gonna sit up front. So you lady live out here?
About the past 6 months.
Meaning you still live in New York?
You always ask us many questions, Argyle?
Sorry, man. I used to drive a cab, and people would expect a little chit-chat. So you divorced?
Just drive the car, man.
Hey, come on. You divorced? You separated? She beat you up?
She had a good job. Turned into a great career.
That meant she had to move here.
You're very fast, Argyle.
So why didn't you come? Well, why didn't you come with her, man? What's up?
Because I'm a New York cop. Got a 6-month backlog of New York scumbags I'm still trying to put behind bars. I can't just pick up and go that easy.
So in other words, you thought she wasn't gonna make it out here, and she'd come crawling right back to you. So why bother to back, right?
Like I said, you're very fast, Argyle.
Oh, okay. All right. Here again. Anything you guys notice? Anything stand out to you as potentially significant?
It didn't seem like at first that John liked his limo driver. Like he kind of was like taken aback by him, maybe.
He's a little aloof,
Yeah.
you could say. Yeah. He kind of opens up pretty quickly, though. I mean,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why does he open up to Argyle so fast? Like, how does can you guys pick up like how that works?
Argyle's kind of like social, and I guess that kind of
Yeah.
comes out of him.
He's definitely pretty good at it, at
Yeah.
kind of getting him to open up. What were you gonna say, Shane?
I was gonna say that sometimes people, when they meet like strangers, they can open up easier to them because it's like, when am I ever gonna see this person again? Type mentality.
Maybe. The danger with an argument like that is that doesn't necessarily hinge on the text, but I feel you on that. I mean, to me, like with everything, it's the way Argyle gets him to open up, right? Like, this is really going to come into play in another way in the next scene, but think about it. Like, McClane doesn't want to talk, really, right? He's basically giving him non-answers. He's like, yeah, blah, blah. And then Argyle says, I'm not going to be able to do it verbatim, but he says, are you guys separated? Are you divorced? She beat you up, and he like laughs. He like makes a joke. Why is that a joke that she beat up McClane?
Because he seems like a stereotypical man, like a masculine man.
He's pretty gruff. He's fairly masculine. We assume, right, given that narrative, that his wife has not whooped his ass. Because that doesn't fit the story, the narrative. So that's the baseline of that joke. Now what happens is Argyle communicates all of that to him, like, this is funny, right? Because that'd be ridiculous, right? Come on. He's like, but you're cool, man. Come on, tell me you're cool. And he's signaling that to Argyle. Argyle's signaling that to him. And McClane gets that information and says, okay, this guy's all right, because they participate in that same narrative. They both understand how it works. That puts McClane at ease, you could argue. And then he starts to open up, right? Good. What else do you guys notice? There's a couple other things in this scene. Does anything stand out to you?
The way his wife like grew a career and she moved away, but he didn't go.
What about that? Did you guys catch, do you guys remember how McClane describes that? He puts it a certain way.
He said she had a job that turned into a career.
Good. She had a good job that became a great career. Either one of you have a job right now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to get too personal, right? But whatever that job is, given your age and your likely experience, it's a job. When I was your age, I had jobs. That meant I had to live with other people. The difference between a job and career is money, stability. She had a job meant, well, what? Like, what's going on? Again, it kind of has to do with his description. You might think about what Argyle says about what McClane maybe wanted, right? That the last line of that scene. But then when she has a career, she gets a career, she doesn't really need anybody else. What's the issue there, do you think? And again, it might help you if you think about what Argyle says, Argyle's last line in the scene about McClane's wife. Do you guys remember what he says?
He said that McClane thought that her job wasn't going to pan out. And
Yeah.
that she was gonna come crawling back.
Come crawling back. What is that? What does it mean to come crawling back to someone?
It's a dependency issue. Like he's implying that she depends on him.
Yeah.
But when she gets that career, she doesn't need him
She
anymore.
doesn't need him anymore. She doesn't need him like that for sure. Yeah. And again, they laugh. And again, it's like the joke Argyle made maybe 10, 15 seconds before that. It works in the same way because it's telling McClane, you and I both understand this narrative, and we're both kind of signing up for it. Like we're both maybe not totally agreeing with it, but we know that that's what we're talking about. That's why this is funny, right? So here's what I'm wondering. McClane, what we know about him right now, among other things, feels very uncomfortable in certain situations, okay? For instance, he does not like to fly. When that guy tells him, make fists with your toes, that's a real weird thing to tell somebody. By the way, I hate flying. It works.
Make a fist with your toes?
It works. It does. But, that's here today. Why do you think, other than the very literal death trap I'm scared of flying, the very literal death trap you're inside of when you're in a plane in the air, why do you think, with what we know about McClane, doesn't he like to fly? If we're thinking like metaphorically.
Socialization, like maybe.
I mean, maybe, but you get the sense he didn't talk to that guy the whole flight. They only just spoke,
Yeah.
right? So it's not... Like, we're talking about being in a plane versus being on the ground. Like, to make fists with your toes, like on the carpet, you see McClane do it at one point. Like, you feel the ground, right? Like, you're never more connected to the ground, probably, than in that moment. What does it mean to be grounded?
To be stable.
Yeah. To like know where you're at, right? If you're in the air, I mean, even if you're not afraid of flying, you don't really know where you are. You're in the sky somewhere, right? Like it's more chaotic, less knowable. You get the sense McClane as a character at the start of the movie is very much about stability, knowing where he's at, knowing how things work. I mean, he's a cop, right? And you see him even in this scene. Yeah, We forgot to mention, we got to talk about her. But outside of the very beginning, he looks around. He's looking at everything as he walks by. He's kind of in this mode of always being in control, always knowing where everybody is. You get the sense that in a scene later, for instance, that we're not going to have time to look at today, when he's talking to Holly, when they finally meet, and they almost make up, by the way, and then they have an argument. You have to use your memory here because we don't have time to go there. What was the issue in their marriage, do you think? It has to do with her career. But like, we learned something about McClane and what he wants versus what his wife wants in their marriage. You guys have a sense of that?
Want to say the distance?
Well, it's the real reason they're separated. Like, I'll put it to you this way. We're going to watch it on Wednesday, so I encourage you to come. But in the scene I'm talking about, Holly says, I miss you. Like, she doesn't want them to be separated. They're not separated because they don't want to be with each other. They're separated for another reason. And it has to do with how they see their marriage working. We'll come back to this, but I just want it in the back of your head. Like, the next scene will help a little bit, actually. Before we get there, last thing we gotta talk about. You see it right here in the screenshot. What's going on here?
That woman's running to
Yeah.
someone she's just now seeing, like, either she got off the plane or he did.
I think he did, given the
Yeah.
direction, but I assume boyfriend?
Yeah,
Why?
because she's so happy to see him, and she like jumps on him.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really see many married couples.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're probably not married either because they're very young, but even if they're romantically involved,
Yeah.
given the, okay. Yeah. We'll talk more about that in a second, but again, first, before she ever gets there, what's going on here?
He's looking at her.
He checks her out, doesn't he? Just for a second. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And again, that's in the script. Why? Why do that? This adds nothing to the movie, right? Why have him check out this young woman, do you think? What does that tell you about him as a character?
Maybe he desires, like, to feel young again, maybe.
Mm.
And like with his troubles with his wife, he feels like he's missing out.
Missing out on what?
Like love.
I'm not trying to be crass. I'm not, but I'm trying to be specific. Is he looking at her with love in his eyes?
No.
No. Okay. We just gotta make that clear.
Yeah.
This is not about love. What's he doing when he checks her out? Again, what's he telling us about?
And he just desires more women.
Sure. He finds her attractive. And again, this is immediately after the flight attendant kind of checks him out for a second. So now again the message is he's not just sexually viable, but he's sexually like interested. Like it's a part of who he is, right? This is still crazy early in the movie when this happens. And again, it's part of that laundry list of things. So cop, but also family man, you know, sex is on his mind. Like that's one of those weird check boxes on that sort of masculinity checklist, right? Okay. Now, she runs and like straddles her boyfriend, right? Did you guys catch what McClane says when he sees that?
Welcome to California or something about
Yeah.
He says California.
Yeah.
He says it just like that, right? Why, do you think? What does he mean by that? We've talked about this before, specifically with California, actually.
It's, I guess, another stereotype of California, comparing it to New York.
Maybe so. How so? You want to try to help him out?
It's more wild and
Okay. Freer is what we
Yeah.
said. Yeah. How so? in this case?
I
What?
guess because like just out in public, she jumps on her boyfriend. And
Okay, good.
That's not very, I guess,
What you call it?
Well, it's pretty free. We can start there.
yeah.
Pretty, you know, maybe for a guy like McClane, maybe it's a little wild. Again, you can think of how McClane has acted thus far, even how he's dressed compared to everybody else. He's wearing this like overcoat. And where he's from. We have a narrative about that place too, don't we? New York City. How do we imagine people are who are from there? What are they like?
Very stern and like business.
All business.
Involved in business.
They have places to be.
Yeah.
How are their interactions with strangers?
They don't talk to strangers. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we think of them as rude because of that.
Rude,
Yeah. He kind of embodies that stereotype a little bit, right? And with Argyle on the plane with the businessman, right? And in a weird way, it's sort of, you can almost think of it as attached to the climate. Now, this movie occurs at Christmas time, so it's in the winter. So he's coming from New York City in the winter. It's fucking cold. Like, that's what the weather report should say. It's accurate. It's fucking cold. So he kind of looks like that. But we, according to our narrative, our stereotypes, right? He kind of acts that way. He's less warm. She's from California. She's dressed like her stomach's out, right? It's way warmer in LA. So she's dressed for that, but she also kind of acts that way, right? That warmth emotionally. She's freer. You have this PDA here. Yeah. And again, he tells us when he goes, California, that he's operating on those same expectations. Like as soon as he sees it, he goes, yep, could have saw that coming, right? Type of thing. So again, it's still very much sort of on the mind of this director as we get into this movie. Sort of the expectations that these different characters have of each other immediately and like how they act upon them, right? Is there anything else we missed from this scene? That was pretty good. All right, we gotta move on so we can talk about Holly anyway. All right, the next scene. And this will probably be all we have time for today. They're still in the car, McClane and Argyle. They are driving to Holly. Oh, I should say, I forgot this. So, on that note about New York City, they keep looking at the skyscraper that they're driving toward. And you get the sense that McClane is like menaced by it in some way, like with his facial expressions. Now, I don't think any of us are going to say that he's afraid of skyscrapers. That's ridiculous. What's the deal with that, though? Do you guys have any sense of like, because we keep, in the way that I talk about the directors moving your gaze, we keep having you notice that skyscraper. We keep having you notice that McClane is noticing it. What's the deal with that?
I would say that's like her career is bigger than his.
See, yeah, that's what I was gonna say, but I felt like it was far off, so I wasn't gonna say.
You can't be right unless you're willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you guys mean?
Like that represents her wealth and like her career that she's established for herself, and that kind of makes him feel like, oh, she doesn't need me. Because she
Okay.
has this.
Okay. Maybe so. One thing you would have to deal with is the idea. I think you guys are right, not least of which because, I mean, that's where they're heading. They're heading to that skyscraper. That's where Holly is. That's where her literal career is, right? And you guys are saying, well, but that's also a metaphor. You can extend that to say it somehow represents her career. It's almost monolithic, right? It's off by itself. If you think about New York City, like a guy like this should not be bothered by skyscrapers. He's from a place made of skyscrapers. If you've ever been to Manhattan, like when you're on the street, because they're on both sides, the skyscrapers, like legit everywhere. Like you almost feel like you're at the bottom of a canyon sometimes. Like it's a little unsettling. So he's used to that. But here in LA, just like in Atlanta, we have some tall buildings, but it's not wall to wall. So this shot, I mean, I know it's not on the screen anymore, but that shot, it's by itself. It's independent. It announces itself in a way that maybe Skyscrapers where he's from wouldn't. And yeah, it makes him uncomfortable, troubles him to have to maybe deal with that in some way. There's more to say about that, but I think this next scene will help you. Like I said, this is the end of their car ride together, and then McClane's going to walk into the building. That's pretty much it.
Mind if we hear some tunes? Hey, that'll work.
You got any Christmas music?
This is Christmas music.
It was December 24th, but hot as hell in the dark. When I see the man chilling with his dog in the park, I approached him very slowly with my heart full of fear. Looked at his dog, oh my God, a ill reindeer. I said I was ill and the man ain't a beer. Had a bag full of goodies, 12 o'clock in there. So I turned my head a second and the man was gone. But he must have dropped his brother back dead on the lawn. I picked the wallet up and then I took the pause. Got the lights and then it cold said Santa Claus. $1 million in the cold, $100 to G.
So your lady sees you, you run into each other's arms, the music comes up, and you live happily ever after, right?
I can live with that.
So if it doesn't work out, man, you got a place to stay?
I'll find a place.
I tell you what, I'm gonna pull in the parking garage and I'll wait. You score, you give me a call on the car phone. I'll take your bags to the desk. You strike out, I'll get you a hotel.
You're all right, Argyle.
Just remember that when you sign for the tip.
Hi,
Good evening.
I'm here to see Holly McClane.
Just type it in there.
Cute toy.
Yeah, you have to take a leak. It'll even help you find your zipper.
Christ. 30th floor.
The party. They're the only ones left in the building. Take the express elevator. Get off where you hear the noise.
Thanks.
All right. So here again. Anything you guys notice in this scene stood out to you?
His wife, I guess, used her maiden last name.
She's not going by his name anymore. Oof. That is it's not a good sign. No. But to be clear, it is important. What you would not want to do in a paper, right, is write me a body paragraph where you're saying their marriage is clearly in trouble. Because she goes by, it's like, we know. He knows too. That's why he says Christ in the way that he does, right? All right. What else could it tell you? The fact that she's going by her maiden name now.
She's independent now.
She's using
She's
her
apart
own.
from him.
Yeah. And again, with what we learned here in a couple minutes in the movie, again, that we don't have time to look at, it's not like she wants to be divorced or separated. She does want to be with him. So it's not like we're after a dissolution of the marriage. But, as best exemplified by her name change, she does want a redefinition in some way. And I do think it comes down to independence. You have her career rather than a job. You have her name change. When we meet her, she's in charge of basically everyone at the party. Like, you have the Nakatomi guy, the Japanese gentleman who, I hate to ask, did you guys watch the movie? Guys, I'm not going to tell you what happens to him. Watch the movie. Anyway, he has a bad day. But she's like right under him. So she's like super in charge of everybody. I'm so bummed out.
You said you weren't going to
I
ask.
shouldn't have asked.
We were doing good.
I've seen it before,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
been
been a
years.
while.
Then you'd,
He got it.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, so his wife has all this power and she's control of folks. She's independent from him, and he doesn't like that. And if you've seen the movie recently, you would remember that in the conversation they have with each other, she basically tells him, you don't like that I'm this way. You want me, and I'm hardcore paraphrasing, but you want me to be a housewife. You want me to not be as independent as I am. And I think she's at least part right. He kind of disagrees with her, but there is something there. They have two different conceptions of what this marriage should be. So I'm just going to ask you guys, given with what we've talked about with McClane and kind of what he's about, how do you think he might conceive of their marriage? Like, what does he maybe want versus what Holly wants?
Maybe he wants sex and for her to take care of the house.
You know, it's
And
funny.
be like a part of him and like take care of him.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. We can't take it too far because we don't know too much.
Yeah.
And I started to kind of laugh off it because you started with sex, and I was like, well, I want to be easy. But at the same time, in an odd way, you have kind of defined the stereotypical, like super old school, traditional idea of marriage, right? Like, think of it this way. Every text, whichever one you pick, is a time capsule from its era, okay? This came out in 1988. Somebody like McClane put him around 40 in 1988. That means he grew up in like the 50s, the 60s, somewhere in there. So that traditional idea of marriage is the idea that he has, right? And again, we're talking about McClane, but this is kind of representing America in 1988. Like, a lot of people think in this way. You have a woman like Holly who gets a career, not a job, but a career, changes her name back to her maiden name. She's independent. Why? Clearly she doesn't like the traditional model. But why do you think? What's her problem with that?
It limits her.
How so?
She's not fully capable because she has to have someone else to provide for her, and she wants to be able to provide
Good.
for herself.
Good. In the same way that who could?
Him.
Good. So it's about being more equal, right? Because I want to make sure we don't get this twisted. Like, I do not think Holly, in the marriage that she's envisioning, wants to be more powerful than McClane, right? She just wants to be...
No, she just wants to have her life just like he
Good.
does.
Good. And you see him struggle with that. Think about how we talked about the plane. And this comes up all through the movie. There's all kinds of ways he's made to feel uncomfortable, less stable, more chaotic. What's more stable than 1950s, 1960s idea of marriage, right? Like, that's the stereotype. We just go along with how that's supposed to be. Don't rock the boat. Holly's like, we're going to rock the boat. What'd you say?
Tsunami.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah. And he has to come to grips with that. So, like, I like to put it that way. And again, just to remind you, we're like maybe 8 minutes or something into the movie. This is where his character starts. He's going to go on an arc in the film. He's going to do a lot of crazy stuff. But by the end, I guess if you remember, they end up back together, right? So you get the sense that they've reconciled. And it's interesting how that happens. Like, basically, a lot of McClane's ideas kind of change in a way. And it's kind of interesting to think about how or why that happens. Right? Okay. Other things you guys noticed. That was good. Anything else stood out to you?
There was something in the beginning that
Okay.
Argyle and him said that stood out to me.
Do you remember, like, what it was about, or?
Talk about when he got out of the car, he was like, do you think it's gonna work out, basically,
Yeah.
what you're about to talk about? And he says, if it doesn't, call me, and I'll just come pick you up and go with your whole stuff.
Okay. What about that?
Oh, man.
All right, let's back up. But we can get to that, perhaps. We can just talk about what I want to talk about. I mean, I kind of think you guys watch the movie. When the scene starts, and again, this is just continuing the last scene we were looking at. Argyle puts a cassette in. I know, very old, but like 1988. He puts a cassette in, and McClane goes, "Do you have any Christmas music?" Because he wants to hear something else. And Argyle says, "This is Christmas music. What are you talking about?" I don't know if you guys can pick out the lyrics, but like,
Talking about meeting Santa Claus.
yeah, it's Christmas music, right? By definition. But not according to McClane's definition. What's McClane's definition?
More traditional Christmas music.
Like carols,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I have a buddy, after Thanksgiving, anytime he's in his car, he will listen to Christmas music at full blast.
Me too.
Ugh.
After Thanksgiving.
Ugh. Ugh. But whatever. But that's the kind of music we're talking about, right? What's interesting to me, we've talked about how we're learning about McClane up to this point, but you could easily argue, I think, that the audience is with McClane in this moment. He says, "Do you have any Christmas music?" And when Argyle's like, "Is this Christmas music?" Everyone in the audience is like, "No, it isn't. What are you talking about?" Because they're expecting the same thing, right? So the kind of signal that's sent in that moment is McClane is very similar to a lot of people in the audience and their expectations, their ideas of how things should be. And again, the parts of the movie are very dated, but it's 1988, so like even more people would think like traditional marriage and all that, right? McClane is what's known as an everyman. One word, everyman. And it just means he's super common in a lot of ways. 1988, a movie like this would be directly compared to the first couple Rambo movies, all the old Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I don't know if you've seen any of those. Those guys look way different from Bruce Willis in this movie. Like, he has his shirt off here in a couple minutes, and like, he's not out of shape, but he's not Sylvester Stallone in Rocky either. You know what I'm saying? Like, he looks like a dude that like does push-ups every day. You know, it's like, yeah, it's fine, you know.
Everyone can like relate to him.
Exactly. And the point I'm making is it's not just in how he looks and how he carries himself, but it's in his values as well, right? We feel like the way he walks through this world and how he interacts with people and the values he espouses, like we kind of see ourselves in that. That's what the everyman business is about. Now that gets real interesting once he starts shooting people, but up until then, this is like one of the first action movies to ever do that. So like, it's really weird element of that character. Along with that, we have moments where like, when Argyle tells him it's his first time driving a limo, and McClane says it's his first time riding in one, and then he rides up front. And then Argyle says, you know, I used to drive a cab. What's the difference between driving a cab and driving a limo?
A cab is for everyone, and a limo is for people who have a little bit of money.
Yeah. So now we're talking about class as well, right? Neither one of them is high class. Neither one of them has that kind of money. They're, you know, again, more like us, but they're also more like each other. Cool.
That scene also
Yeah.
is different. If he's from New York, he should be used to cabs, and you usually sit in the back.
You do. What? But the whole point, I think the point there is he's just really uncomfortable being in the limo, right? So he would, if it were a cab, I think he would feel at home sitting in the back. I think the whole idea with the limo is like, it's almost like he's just riding around with a buddy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, this is one more thing about being uncomfortable. He's uncomfortable with what he doesn't know. He doesn't know the limo. He's not cool riding in the back. He doesn't want to be treated like that. Makes him feel icky. But it's kind of interesting because that's on the same level of Holly being independent. Sitting in the back of the limo, Holiday Inn Independence. Both are just, I don't know these things. These feel strange. This is different. I don't like it, right? That's what we're talking about. So the film, I think, is making a really interesting commentary on some silly stuff, like riding in limos, and also some pretty serious shit. But it's saying they kind of, at least in this movie, they work in a similar way, which is interesting. There's something else I was going to say. Oh, I forgot it. Oh, no. Oh, one thing I can point out to you. Oh, no, okay, I remember. Sorry. All right, we'll get to that other thing. We were building to the point you guys sort of maybe tried to make about Argyle telling McClane that he could help him out, right? Did you guys notice when McClane first gets out of the car, Argyle basically says, like, do you need help or whatever? Because it's pretty clear McClane's not from here, probably doesn't know anybody. McClane kind of brushes him off. But by the end of their exchange, much like earlier, like he opened up eventually, by the end of their exchange, he basically says, you know what, you're all right. And he like accepts his help. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have any idea why that might be? Like what he says to him? He says this particular thing to him. Let me try to find it again. We have the time. Oh.
I guess he was basically comparing Argyle to the stereotype of people from California.
I mean, he would have those expectations probably. He's also a good deal younger than McClane, and age is always a factor. Hang on, let me see. I don't know where this is gonna. Oh, that's damn close. Look at that.
You can live with that.
So if it doesn't work out, man, you got a place to stay?
I'll find a place.
I tell you what, I'm gonna pull in the parking garage and I'll wait. You score, you give me a call on the car phone. I'll take your bags to the desk. You strike out, I'll get you a hotel.
You're all right, Argyle.
Just remember that when you sign for the tip.
All right. What does Argyle say? They don't say much. He says no, and then Argyle says one thing, or probably like two sentences.
If he strikes out, he'll help him out. If he succeeds, he'll bring his bags up and stuff.
How does he talk about success? He says it in a particular way.
If you score,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it. I didn't know if it was really what he said.
You can't be right unless you're willing to be wrong. Yeah. What's that about? What does that mean?
Well, it's another baseball reference.
Yeah. Yeah. What's
But
it?
basically scoring like if you get some.
Yeah. Just like he did in that earlier scene, we talked about how he got McClane to open up. Again, here he's like, look, man, we've done this twice already. I'm going to use the same narrative, okay? If you score, if you have relations with your lady friend, I'll bring you bags, man. Don't even worry about it. I got you, right? He's kind of telling him, if you check that box on that masculine scorecard, I'll get you bags in there. Don't even worry about it. You just keep doing you. If not, I'll help you out. So again, we're kind of arguing the power of maybe agreeing on that narrative or signaling to each other that they understand how it works enables these guys to relate to each other, you could argue, right? And so in this scene, that sways him, and he says, yeah, you're all right, man. We get each other, basically. And he accepts his help. It's very interesting. That's throughout the movie. I promise, it's everywhere. What's also everywhere, one or two other things I want to talk about with the time we have left. If you ever, I don't know why you would, but if you ever Google Die Hard, is it a Christmas movie? You will find such debate online. People are adamant on either side of the issue. And I'm here to tell you, first of all, that it is a Christmas movie. And then secondly, I'm smarter than anyone who says it's not. That's real. But the reason I say that is, not just that it is a Christmas movie, because it is, but that it wants to be one. This movie is constantly reminding you that it's a Christmas movie. I mean, granted, that's supposed to be when it takes place, so like, super obvious things like he shows up to a Christmas party, right? Like in the next scene after this, he gets off the elevator and it's an office Christmas party. Okay. When he's walking down the hallway, what's he whistling? It's a Christmas carol. Yeah, I can't remember which one right now. But yeah, it's like Deck the Halls or some nonsense. I don't remember. Yeah. Constant weird references. When he kills... I remember this movie probably better than you guys. There's a guy named Carl, the big Viking-looking dude with the long blonde hair. They called him Carl. He kills that guy's brother, and he sends him down. He sends the dead body downstairs in an elevator with a sign. Do you guys remember any of this? Watch the movie. Because it's a dead body, so it's put him in a chair, right? He dresses him up like Santa Claus. And on the sign that he sends with him, it says, "Now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho."
That's like a popular scene from this.
Sure. I know. But again, the point is, Christmas is throughout the movie, all over the movie. And I think there's a reason for that we do not have time to get into today. But the point is, if for some reason you happen to look the movie up, I don't want you to immediately discount that idea, because if you do, I think you're going to miss a lot that the movie is trying to get you to think about. Anything else? We're basically out of time, but I want to... There is one other thing we could talk about, I suppose. By the way, like I said earlier, I'm just trying to give you guys like a wide-ranging menu of possibilities. When you write your papers about whatever text you choose, I do not want you to feel it at all necessary to give me every detail from every scene, and like that's bananas, but I'm trying to help you see the possibilities. So one other possibility, and then we'll leave, okay? One other possibility in this scene we haven't talked about. When he's using the touch screen and he sees...
Oh, yeah, I was going to talk about that.
Okay,
I know where you're going with it.
go for it.
When he calls it a toy.
Yeah, what about that? He says it's a cute toy.
Maybe he's... I mean, we kind of get the sense that he's a traditional man. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like pretty high technology for the 80s. I'd
Yeah,
say.
it is.
I wasn't there, but
It is. I was 2 when the movie came out, but from what I remember, it's pretty high technology.
yeah. So maybe he's just not used to that, and maybe he's like discrediting. He seems like he's uncomfortable with it. So maybe he's like discrediting it because it's not like what he's used to.
That's part of it. I think we could push further on it, though. I agree with you. But also think legit of what that little screen is doing. Like, he types in a letter, and it's going to tell him where his wife is. More than that, it's going to tell him his wife's new name. She hasn't even told him. This cute toy is going to tell him. That's power. That's a weird power, but it's power. For this thing to be like, oh yeah, she's over there. She's on the 30th floor. You go that way. I'm going to tell you where to go now. It's a cute toy. The receptionist guy says something too. Do you guys remember what he says? It's a real weird thing to say about a screen.
He said it can help him find the zipper.
If he needs to take a leak.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's a weird thing to say to somebody you just met. Why does he do that, do you think? Because I think it's a similar reason why McClane talks about it as a cute toy.
Because McClane was a lot different.
What do you mean?
Was he like trying to discredit McClane because like he looked different, like trying to be
Oh.
embarrassed?
No. Like, think about it this way. Like, in all the ways we've talked about it thus far, we haven't even gotten to the cool parts of the movie, right? Like, on 3 separate occasions already, Argyle has communicated to McClane that we understand each other. We understand this narrative.
Oh, like a joke.
Yeah. And it's a joke, right?
Yeah.
It's really weird joke, but it's a joke he makes about the screen, right? If you need to take a leak, it'll find your zipper for you, he says, something like that. But it sounds super similar to something we've already talked about this semester, actually, with Weary. Do you guys remember this? It's talking about his anti-tank gun. We talk about zippers in Vonnegut, if nobody remembers. Yeah, breaking my heart. We said the anti-tank gun sounded like the zipper of the fly on the zipper on the fly of God Almighty, something like that. And the whole point of that paragraph was that the anti-tank gun was a giant penis. So anyway, close the class out. He's making some kind of weird, masculine-tinged joke involving penises. That's how you know it's masculine. But in reference to this screen. And my theory would be, for the same reason McClane calls it a cute toy, right? Oh, this cute toy is going to tell me where my wife is. And he's like, oh shit, it does. Oh shit, that's not her name anymore. Right? The receptionist, what was his job before this screen showed up?
Telling people that
Where-
exact information.
His whole job. Yeah. It's taking power from him. What little power he wielded in his position. Yeah. Well, how do you compensate for that? You let this guy know, nah, but I can still make fun of it with this narrative we have about how powerful we are as men, right? You have a zipper, I have one too. We know why that is, don't we, buddy? Right? Like that's how that joke works. It's not funny when I say it that way. It's creepy when I say it that way. But yeah, they're doing that all through the movie. And I think in some ways, that narrative gets explored in everything that McClane does. Especially when it comes to him and Holly. We've got to be thinking about that. All right. All we're doing for the rest of this week, like I said, next time we're watching more scenes. We might even get to some cool stuff, like something will blow up or whatever. Your homework for the end of this week, it's just a brainstorming exercise. It's a discussion board. You are meant to post at least one, but most people post 2 to 3 texts that you're thinking about using for this assignment, okay? And it can be just about anything. I've had people write about commercials in the past, you know, like anything that somehow participates in the conversations we've had this semester, okay? But the idea is you can obviously post your thing and maybe get some feedback from some of your classmates, but you can also go read their stuff and get different ideas. You know, like you'd be surprised what you'll think of. You won't, I'm not saying you'll steal somebody else's thing, but they'll talk about a text. You're like, oh, that kind of reminds me of this other thing I hadn't even considered. Right? Like that's all we're doing for this week is practice and trying to figure out what we're going to write about. Pretty low stakes. Sound good? All right. I'll see you guys later. Go watch the movie, for the love of God.